You say you want to forget, that you want to move on. But then tell me, why do you still think about that person every day? Why, even knowing that they hurt you, do you miss them? Why does every notification on your phone quicken your heart in the hope that it's them, even after everything? Don't lie to yourself. You don't miss the person themselves. You miss what you projected onto them, the illusion of love, the reflection of what you wanted them to be. Carl Jung said that what we do not face in ourselves, we will find as fate. And maybe that's exactly what's happening to you right now. You are not just dealing with a breakup, you are facing a mirror that is trying to show you something you never had the courage to see. This video is not about cliché self-help advice, nor about how to move on, pretending nothing happened. Here, the truth will hurt. It will poke at wounds you tried to hide, but it will also set you free. The reality is brutal. Often, what we call love is just our shadow clinging to someone who feeds our unhealed wounds. It's your unconscious begging for recognition, even if it means staying attached to someone who destroys you. This is not love, it's imprisonment. And what if I told you that this attachment, this pain, this anxiety you feel every time you find yourself ignored or rejected has nothing to do with the person and everything to do with what you have yet to find within yourself? In this video, I will guide you through a deep, dark, and transformative journey. We will explore the hidden mechanisms of your mind, understand why you cling to those who hurt you, and most importantly, how to begin to set yourself free. But be prepared. What you are about to hear may not be easy, because the truth never is. But it is only by facing this truth that you will finally stop begging for love and start to find yourself. Are you ready? If you are, let's move on. Have you ever stopped to think about why you feel so connected to someone who clearly doesn't do you any good? Why? Even recognizing the abuse, the manipulation, and the pain, something inside you begs for more. The answer is not in the other person. It is within you, and more deeply than you imagine. Carl Jung did not see relationships merely as social interactions. For him, each emotional bond is, in fact, a mirror of the unconscious. When we fall in love, we are not seeing the person as they truly are. We are projecting onto them parts of ourselves that we do not know or that we have been forced to repress throughout our lives. This is what Jung called psychic projection. You are not attached to this person for who they are, but for what they represent within your internal world. They may have embodied, even if unconsciously, the archetype of the anima or the animus, primordial images of the feminine and masculine that live in the unconscious of each of us. These figures symbolize what is missing in us, what we seek to feel complete. But when projected onto someone, they create such an intense illusion that we confuse completeness with dependence and love with submission. The problem, what begins as admiration and passion transforms into obsession when the other person does not correspond to the idealized image we project. And then we start to lose ourselves. We accept crumbs, justify abuse, sabotage ourselves, all in the name of a love that, in fact, never existed in the way we believed. It was not love. It was emotional need masked by unconscious fantasy. And as long as you continue to seek outside what is missing inside, you will be eternally imprisoned by the gaze of the other. You become a hostage to unanswered messages, intermittent attention, validation that never comes. All of this because your unconscious believes that only through the other can you be someone. But Jung warns us, as long as you do not integrate these hidden parts within yourself, you will continue to fall into the same patterns, repeating the same cycles, choosing the same people with different faces. And this is not bad luck. It is unconscious destiny. So how do you escape this trap? How do you stop living to meet the emotional expectations of others and start reconnecting with your true self? This is what we will explore in the next part. the unconscious search for validation, and the price paid for betraying oneself. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. You learned too early that you needed to please in order to be loved, that you needed to be good, be useful, be desirable to deserve someone's presence. And so you built a persona, a carefully crafted mask, to fit into the desires of others. But every time you mold yourself to fit someone else's expectations, you drift a little further away from who you really are. Carl Jung called this the persona, the character we create to survive in the social world. It is necessary, but when we start to believe that we are only this mask, we begin to suffocate the self, our true self. And this is exactly what happens in relationships marked by emotional dependency. You dim your light to keep the other person close. You silence your wants, your pains, your essence, just to avoid rejection. The problem is that this validation you seek so much from the outside, in the gaze, in the touch, in the approval of others, is never enough. Because no matter how much the other person tells you that you are amazing, if deep down you feel like you are living a lie, you will continue to feel empty. It's like trying to satisfy hunger with wind. This emptiness that eats away at you is not longing for the person. It is longing for yourself, for what you had to abandon to be accepted, for the freedom to exist without the fear of being left. And as long as you continue to depend on the other to know who you are, each absence will be a collapse. Each silence will be interpreted as rejection. Each criticism will be a deep wound. And that's where anxiety is born. That tightness in your chest, the insomnia, the obsession with messages, the constant emotional vigilance. Because deep down, what you fear is not losing the other. It is being forced to look at yourself and realize that you no longer know who you are without that relationship. But this anxiety is not your enemy. It is a signal, a symptom that your psyche is in conflict, that parts of you are fighting to emerge, but you keep pushing them down into the basement of the unconscious. And the more you try to ignore them, the louder they scream. And that's when we begin to understand the true role of anxiety in toxic relationships. It is not just a side effect, it is the alarm of the soul. And to face it, you need to go beyond the symptoms. You need to confront the causes. In the next part, we will dive deeper. How anxiety arises from internal fragmentation and what it is trying to show you about yourself. You call it anxiety, but in reality, it is the muffled scream of parts of you that have been forgotten, rejected, amputated in the name of love. It is your soul trying to warn you that something is wrong, that you are living an emotional lie, that the price you are paying to maintain this relationship is too high, and the one paying is your true self. Carl Jung shows us that the human psyche is composed of multiple layers, conscious and unconscious, that need to be in harmony. When you suffocate who you are to sustain a relationship, that harmony breaks. What remains is a brutal internal division. And this division manifests as anxiety. It is not just a fear of abandonment. It is a silent struggle between what you feel and what you allow yourself to feel. Every time you swallow your tears to not bother anyone, every time you say, "I'm fine," when you are actually imploding inside, you reinforce this split. And anxiety arises as a defense mechanism of your psyche. It is your unconscious's attempt to regain balance. It is as if there is a battle happening inside you. On one side, the false self pleading for external acceptance. On the other, the true self suffocated, crying out for authenticity. You feel a tightness in your chest because you are trying to fit into a space that was never made for you. You feel your heart racing because your soul is running, fleeing from a life that is not its own. You feel the constant fear of losing the other because, deep down, you have already lost yourself. And this anguish does not disappear with a replied message, a reunion, or a new promise. Because the problem is not with the other. It is in your disconnection from your own essence. As long as you seek outside what can only be rebuilt within, anxiety will be your faithful companion. But Jung teaches us that this fragmentation is not an end. It is a call, an invitation for you to reintegrate, to look within, to listen to what this anguish is trying to say, and to reclaim the parts you abandoned along the way. And this is where we enter one of the most powerful and dangerous forces of the unconscious, the shadow. In the next part, we will explore how the psychological shadow fuels the repetition of toxic patterns and why you keep choosing what destroys you. If you truly want to be free, you need to be ready to face what you have hidden from yourself. You think you consciously choose who you relate to. But what if I told you that, most of the time, it is the most hidden part of your mind that makes that decision for you? That it is not you who chooses the pain, it is your shadow. That hidden, denied, repressed part, but which, in the silence of your unconsciousness, still governs your life. Carl Jung defined the shadow as everything you do not want to be, but are. Everything that society, your parents, your culture said was wrong, ugly, shameful, and that you, to be accepted, buried deep in your soul. But burying is not eliminating. What you repress becomes psychic energy waiting for a stage. And you know what the shadow's preferred stage is? Relationships. You attract what mirrors your shadow, and that is why, without realizing it, you repeat the same cycle with different people. You change the name, you change the face, but the pattern is the same. You nullify yourself, the other hurts you, you blame yourself, you beg for crumbs, and call it love. This is not bad luck. This is destiny shaped by your own internal darkness. Do you get involved with emotionally unavailable people? With narcissists? With manipulators? Ask yourself, what do these relationships reveal about what you hide from yourself? Perhaps you deny your anger, your desire to be seen, your wish for control. And that is why you submit to someone who embodies exactly what you do not dare to be. The shadow manifests this way, projecting itself onto the other. You hate in them what you do not accept in yourself. You love in them what you have abandoned in yourself. It is a cruel game, but necessary until you face what you hide. Because as long as you do not recognize your shadow, it will continue attracting situations that reflect it, so that finally you can see it. Jung said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." It is not enough to flee from toxic relationships. You need to understand why they attract you, and that requires courage. The courage to look within and admit that part of the chaos comes from you, that you carry old wounds, unresolved traumas, repressed desires, and that all of this needs to be integrated, not ignored. But then, how to transform this shadow into strength? How to interrupt the cycle of emotional self-sabotage and rebuild the most important relationship of your life, the one you have with yourself. This is what Jung called the process of individuation. And in the next part, we will dive into this path of returning to your center, how individuation can be the beginning of your emotional liberation. Now that you have seen your shadow, are you ready to start healing? If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It breaks down Jung's core ideas and gives you tools to understand yourself more deeply. Link is in the pinned comment. There comes a point when you realize you can no longer live divided. You can no longer be two, what you show the world and what screams inside you. It is at this exact moment, when the pain can no longer fit inside you, that the true healing process begins. For Carl Jung, this is the start of individuation, the psychological process by which the individual stops being a puppet of their masks and unconscious wounds and begins to become who they really are. But don't be mistaken. Individuation is not a beautiful or light path. It is a confrontation. You will have to face everything you have avoided. Your insecurities, your traumas, your self-destructive patterns. You will have to open your eyes to the games you created yourself. And accept that at many moments, you were complicit in the pain you suffered. Not because you wanted to suffer, but because you didn't know how to live any other way. Because your identity was shaped by absence, the need for approval, the fear of being rejected. Individuation begins the moment you stop chasing those who do not see you and start looking at yourself with brutal honesty. When you question, why do I abandon myself so much to keep the other close? What am I trying to compensate for? What part of me do I give away every time I beg for love? These questions are painful, but they are what tear the veil of illusion. In this process, you begin to reclaim the lost parts of your soul. Every boundary you set, every time you choose silence instead of begging, every time you say no instead of bending, you're saying yes to your deepest self. You are breaking away from the false self that was created to please and building a new self, more whole, more complete, more free. And here is the most powerful point. When you reconnect with your center, the other stops being your salvation. You no longer need to be accepted to feel worthy. You no longer need to beg for affection to feel complete. Because you return to inhabit your own body, your own space, your own truth. Jung said that individuation is the realization of the self, the core of who you are, free from the masks of the persona and the tyranny of the shadow. It is at this point that you realize you do not need those who hurt you to feel alive. You just needed to remember that your pain is not who you are, it is merely a chapter of your story. But before concluding this journey, there is still one last step. Understanding what all of this means in practice. How to apply this knowledge in everyday life. How to truly break this bond with those who hurt you. And more importantly, how to transform this break into inner power. You made it this far because deep down, you already knew something needed to change. Maybe you couldn't name the pain. Maybe you thought it was weakness, neediness, dependency. But now you understand. It was the call of your soul, a silent scream saying that you have endured too much, that you have sacrificed too much, that you have distanced yourself so much from yourself that you can hardly recognize yourself in the mirror anymore. Letting go is not about forgetting. It's not about erasing memories or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about understanding, accepting, and releasing. It's realizing that the person who hurt you was part of a chapter but doesn't need to be present in the next pages. That maintaining a bond with those who destroy you is like trying to cross the ocean dragging an anchor. You will sink before you get anywhere. And don't be fooled. Letting go hurts. Breaking invisible ties requires strength. Because you are not just leaving someone behind, you are burying expectations, fantasies, idealized versions, hopes that never materialized. But this pain is sacred because it is the pain of rebirth. It is the necessary mourning for you to return to yourself, so that finally you can occupy the space that was once dominated by the absence of the other. You no longer need to diminish yourself to fit into tight relationships. You no longer need to mold yourself to the expectations of those who do not see your essence. The time has come to choose yourself, to put yourself first, not out of selfishness but out of integrity. Because as long as you keep trying to save broken ties, you will always be moving away from your own salvation. Carl Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you really are. And perhaps this is the most courageous choice you can make right now. Not trying to change the other, not trying to fix the past, but deciding with all the firmness of your soul that you will live from your truth, without masks, without shackles, without repeating patterns that only hurt you. So tell me, what do you need to let go of to finally set yourself free? Write it in the comments. Use this space as a cutting ritual, a symbolic act of liberation. Write as if you were saying this to yourself, because you are. And if this message touched you, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Here, you won't find easy answers, but you will find deep truths that can change the course of your life. And one more thing, don't stop here. The next video is just as important as this one. It may bring exactly the missing piece to complete this puzzle.